everybody. Welcome to Ministry Mondays with Meg. I'm Meg. If you've never been to the show before, welcome. But also, where have you been? We're glad you're here now, though. So, Ministry Mondays is talking about ministry, all those things that happen beyond the pulpit. If you've never seen us before, you can catch all of our episodes, YouTube, on the social medias, wherever you find your podcast, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. So there's my commercial. Today, my guest, one of these days, like I will get confetti or something in here. Drum roll, please, is Reverend Paul Raushenbush. I hope I said that right, and I should have asked before we started, but who is president and CEO of Interfaith Alliance and has this, oh my gosh, your resume, senior advisor for public affairs and innovation at Interfaith America, senior vice president of Auburn Seminary, founding executive director of HuffPost Religion, associate dean of religious life. Wow. Also his own podcast, host of the State of Belief podcast. I need to add that to my list. And I'll put it like in show notes for those of you who'd like to catch it. Welcome to the show. Thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you, Meg. It's really exciting to be with you, and thank you. It's such a great idea for a podcast.
Yeah. So, for those who don't know you, or don't know like all the things, like, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do, and we'll just go from there.
Well, it's, I've been around for a while, so that we don't want to take up too much time with the resume, and you've already heard some of the positions I've held. I am an American Baptist ordained. I have served in churches. I've served in universities. I've done a lot in media and also in the nonprofit kind of religion and democracy space, and that's where Interfaith Alliance is. I've been very active in kind of in storytelling. So the State of Belief, kind of like Ministry Mondays, is a way for me to frame a little bit this current moment in religion and democracy, and invite people who I am interested in and want to talk to about like what they're doing, kind of like what you're doing, Meg. And I come from an interfaith family, so from the beginning of my ministry, I've also been involved in interfaith work and really take that very seriously. My closest cousins are my Jewish cousins, and so I've worn many hats, but the through line is really trying to do that basic thing of loving God and loving neighbor, and figuring out the most kind of impactful and also fun way to do that. And so that's maybe a decent introduction into a wider conversation.
I mean, one, I'll just say, like, reading your family, like your family tree, that in and of itself, like great grandson of Walter and Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis. I mean,
Louis Brandeis. Louis Brandeis. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. It's been especially fun recently for me because over the past 7 years, I have been writing a biography of my grandmother, Elizabeth Brandeis. And so interestingly, Elizabeth Brandeis, who is the daughter of Louis Brandeis, who was a Supreme Court Justice, one of the most famous, he was the first Jewish Supreme Court Justice, one of the most famous Jews in America. He met my grandfather, who was the son of Walter Raushenbush. So Elizabeth met Paul at University of Wisconsin in Madison, and they were both economists, and they got married. And so these two great families, because Walter Raushenbush was also very well known as a pastor and a religious thinker. And so and together they they did amazing work. They created the first unemployment compensation bill. They were very involved in like minimum wage work and stopping the exploitation of children in labor. And so anyway, I that part of my heritage has been enriched by the last 7 years of really investigating who they were and what inspired them. So I'm very grateful for the heritage that I was handed just out of being born.
So is that book? Is it ready to go?
No, it's ready. It's kind of it's with a publisher, and it's going to take another year or so to get to come out. But yeah,
Okay.
but it's going to be fun, and it's a timely book, and Elizabeth Brandeis, interesting, woman who got a PhD in 1928, and in economics. So one of those trailblazing, a lot of amazing women. Actually, that was kind of the revelation, was all the cool women who were working at that time who didn't even have the right to vote. And yet they were like, changing America. It's really, so anyway, not to get on that tangent, but
yeah, no.
It's just the richness of the heritage I come from. I kind of was skimming along the surface, and in the last 7 years, finally at the age of from in my 50s, I started getting really deep on what it meant, and it's really been such a gift.
That's so cool. I think it's cool anyway. I mean, I'd read it because we need those voices, we need those histories, that those things that tell us to keep fighting.
Yes, no, I mean that's such an important message. I mean, they were really fighting in that time when there was and they just didn't say no. These women who were like going in with these long dresses, but they were like, okay, I'm going to investigate your factory that is exploiting the workers, and I'm gonna make sure that workers are not are you have no 8-year-old kids who are dying because they're working these jobs, and they wouldn't take no as an answer. And so I just think it actually was very, it's been very empowering for me to focus on these stories. And, back to the idea of ministry, like, my great grandfather and he came from a line of 7 clergy people. They had all been clergy people. And so when they came to America, my great grandfather became a Baptist. He was a Lutheran, became a Baptist. And then his son became a Baptist minister. Walter became a Baptist minister. And then none of his children actually formally went into the ministry. None of them went to seminary. They all studied economics. They studied sociology. They were amazing people. But the idea, I think, what I love about the idea of your podcast is that ministry can happen in the church, but it can also happen around the church. And that the inspiration, they all took the social gospel, which is what Walter Raushenbush was very associated with. They all took that idea very seriously. And they did what they felt called to do, coming out of that idea of how do we really look, to create the kingdom of God on earth. And have it reflect heaven. And so they really did try hard to do that. And ministry can happen in so many different ways. And everyone can be called, and not everyone has to be called to the pulpit. That's for sure.
Best explanation of my podcast ever. Like, I should take that clip and be like, this is it right here, folks. Yes, absolutely. And so, like, when you prepare for these shows and you Google your guest and all of these things come up, there you are on CNN, talking about all the craziness that's going on.
So yeah, when I do a lot of public speaking, and I do a lot of speaking into the media and social media as well. I really think it is so important that we don't cede any space. For me, when I started, so when I was getting ordained in, and I went to seminary from 93 to 96. And then served at actually an American Baptist church out in Seattle, First Baptist Church in Campanis Mission, which was an amazing missionary program where you can go in and serve. And so I did that. But I came of like kind of into my professional career at the same time the internet became public and became, really became kind of a public thing. So one of my first things I did was I was part of a website called BeliefNet, which was a really big effort. And we had, something like $60 million. And we had an incredible effort to cover religion in a respectful, inclusive way. And I started an advice column there called Ask Pastor Paul, because I wanted to I wanted to be, it's, you can still find it. It's out there, but it's, BeliefNet has gone through many, many iterations and is no longer exactly what it was. But anyway, it was, I wanted to be people to have access and interaction with as many people as possible. And so people from around the country, even around the world, would send in questions, and I would answer them as best as I could from my pastoral background. But it really got me in the public, kind of this, the broader conversation about the internet, about religion, and about how, mass communication. And then when I started, I had many church jobs. I worked in 3 different churches: Madison Avenue Baptist Church, Riverside Church, and Seattle First Baptist. Then I went to work at Princeton. All the while, I had this online kind of persona. So I was doing in real time and online. And I do view part of my ministry has really been my online work. And so I had an amazing position at Princeton that I had for 8 years as the Associate Dean of Religious Life in the chapel, and had so many opportunities there. And was able to, preach there and foster interfaith cooperation and interfaith community at the university. At the same time, my work online was kind of also really important to me. So when Arianna Huffington was starting Huffington Post, which was at that time really a center for the internet. I mean, it was amazing how powerful it was. It was millions of people every day coming to this one place on the internet. And so I approached Arianna and I just said, "You're not doing religion and I can do it for you." And she wrote me right back. I happened to have her email, and I just kind of pitched her out of the blue. I didn't know her at all. She wrote me right back and she said, I love that idea. Let's do it. And so I did it for a year. I did it while I was at Princeton, and then AOL bought Huffington Post. There was a ton of money, and I just wrote to Arianna and said, we can blow this up and we can become the center of religion on the internet. And so she gave me a big budget. I left Princeton, and my dad, who was a law professor for 40 years at University of Wisconsin, was like, "You're leaving Princeton for a website?" He could not fathom that I was, because I had a great, I had kind of I could have stayed there the rest of my life. Yeah. But anyway, this is about ministry. I mean, I hope this is a relevant story to the goal of the podcast, because I really felt I felt very called to pursue this. And so we ended up being the biggest religion website for 5 years. And what I did at that website is I included voices who had not been included in the conversation before. So I purposefully sought out individuals from all different faith traditions who the mainstream media, they weren't in their Rolodex. But because I started asking people who didn't have big profiles, but they had such a great vision. So it's been amazing. One of the most gratifying things about my life has been many people have come up to me and said, "I got my start." Like people who have had big public careers have said, "I got my start writing for you at Huffington Post." And for me, that nurturing of diverse talent, racially, religious, age, all of it, and saying we need more religious voices to represent the fullness of America. That was a big part of my what I felt called to do, and so this idea of communications and speaking into that was a major part of that.
That's beautiful. That's perfect, and that's what I hope this becomes. So if you've got people, introduce me. I'd love to give them a voice, give them a place to tell their story. I mean, yeah, I don't have the following that you do, but I'll still share their story with whoever wants to listen, because I think that's so important, is giving people
Yeah.
a chance and putting it out there. That is super. I think it's super cool. I'm a Gen Xer, so like I'm one of those who went through high school without didn't use computer and then had to figure it out for college and all that stuff. And yeah, I remember how Huffington Post, like, that's huge. I mean,
Yeah, it was really huge at the time. It was amazing. I could do a story and have a million people look at one story, because we had AOL. We were bought by AOL, and AOL had this fire hose. So anyone who, again, people forget how powerful AOL. It was the internet
yeah,
for America for a long time. And so, like, you would get on their homepage and it would just be like, and so we did, it was amazing. And so it was like one of those perfect kismet moments. And I feel very lucky to have been there.
yeah. I mean, the fact that you could just go, "Hey, Ariana Huffington, I think you should do this, and I think that we should be the religion hub for the internet." And okay, let's
Yeah,
do
no,
that.
I mean, that was
Well,
that was so great. And I mean, one of the things, and this is actually probably along the lines of what you like to talk about. When I was at Princeton, um, I talked to a lot of kids who had done everything right their entire life to get to Princeton. That was like, because you can't make, even like, you have to do everything right to get in, and it's so hard to get in. And like twice, the president of it was great. The president of the university would always say, we could have gotten a whole nother class because we had so many people who were equally as talented, but we picked you, but she acknowledged that there were so many people who were so brilliant there. But it was interesting talking to them towards, when they became seniors, and they were like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I don't know what doing the right thing is now. And so one of the things that I encouraged them to do, and I also encourage, people who are interested in ministry writ large, is I use a word that is almost never used in seminary or in a place like Princeton, is you got to hustle. You got to figure out, where's the opportunity. Who haven't you talked to? So when I reached out to Ariana, I got her email because I had been CC'd in a communication that other people were having with her. And so that's how I got her email. And I just used it. And I pitched her, and I had no standing. No one gave me permission to do it, but I was hustling. And a lot of the positions that I've gotten, or created, and this one I actually created, have been because I hustled with a vision. And I said, oh, what are you doing? And I always, like, after college, I had a religion degree, which I chose because I assumed I would never use it. And I majored in religion, but I chose that major because I was like, I'll never use a religion degree. I wasn't like I wasn't the traditional pious kid who was like, I'm going to seminary and then I'm going to be ordained. Like, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm interested in religion as as a course of study. I'm never going to use it, but this way I can just, so I got a one-way ticket to Barcelona after college. And I was like, I'm going to figure out something to do there. And when I got there, I just was like, everyone I talked to, I was like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm really interested in that. And so I started a record company because I met people who had a record company, and I was like, do you want to have a bigger record company? And then that led to a DJing residency and all this kind of stuff. And it just happened. And so if someone is listening and thinking like, wow, I want to, I'm interested in, I listen to this podcast because I'm like, searching for ideas. I just think it's always good to ask good questions of everyone around you. What are you doing? What's that like? How did that happen? And always be in a mode of possibility. And like, oh, I might be able to offer you something. And I might be able to like add to what you're doing. And I still do that today with all of my work at Interfaith Alliance. Is I do a lot of conversations with partners, saying, what are you doing? What is your goal? Like, how could we work together? And I do think that that's a really important idea for for ministry is that, a lot of times, like, just giving yourself permission to get out there, ask questions, imagine a broader idea, because it can get very heavy. And, and you can sense like, okay, this is what it is. And, ministry can be whatever you decide to make it.
Because when you get to funeral number 40, you're just like, you're 6
Right.
for the week, you're going, I can't even. But the hustle. So when you finish writing that book about grandma, that the hustle would be the next one, because I would totally. I would read that one. I would sell that one. Because that's a lot of what. And I think the up and comings, or are ones that are newer into ministry now, get that. Those that, especially that have that entrepreneurial call to ministry, like, get the hustle. Like, they get that there has to be more than one iron in the fire, and that it's completely okay to do more than just, you don't have to just be devoted to a church congregation. It doesn't have to be a building. That ministry is far beyond that. That's I totally, seriously, I would read the hustle book. I would schlep the hustle book. Here's me. I didn't write it, but folks, this is it. See, this is what I love about the podcast is just where you just go, that's brilliant. It's also not over anybody's head or anything, but oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Yeah, that's it. What's your favorite thing, like, about what you get to do, what you do now?
Well, my favorite thing is also kind of the biggest charge or burden, which is I get to just, as a CEO and as a president, in collaboration with a lot of folks, but I get to decide what matters to our organization. And, like, what are we, given the resources we have, and given the connections we have, and given the mission that we have, what are we going to do? And be part of the engine, but really view myself as in some ways the engineer of the engine, to determine how we're going to spend our time, how we're going to spend our money, how we're going to spend our collective resources to be the most impactful and most effective and most life-giving organization that we can be. But so that, I actually think that's very similar to anyone who has, especially is in a senior minister or a solo minister position, is that in some ways you have a lot of people, but you're being hired to imagine what the best and highest use is of your resources, your time, your church, your congregation, and set a vision and invite the community with you. And so that's, I really love that. But it's also, it's a great deal of responsibility. And so it is, it's an opportunity to really trust yourself in a way, and say, okay, I know. Sorry.
So when you go on like to CNN or on a thing, here you come in as the president, and CEO of Interfaith Alliance, like, how do you like center yourself there and think about, like, this is why I am here to do this, or Is it, do they just give you this very like narrow, this is exactly what we want you to talk about?
Well, so when I go on CNN, or if I'm doing a public appearance, there has been all kinds
Yeah.
of work that has led to that. I mean, the only reason they're going to have me on CNN is because the organization, or has broadly decided to do something that is newsworthy and is like, and so there's it's never I never arrive at a public speaking or a media appearance without knowing exactly why I'm there. But I will say, like, I have I come right now. I know why I'm there, and I will say, I'll let you in on a little secret. Just recently, because I'm very concerned about the nature of our country right now, and what's happening in our country, I have said to myself before I go on I said, come out swinging. Don't, you don't have a lot of time. Tell them exactly why you're there, and come out swinging. Give it to them. Give it to them. And that has been very helpful. And, for instance, I think, I was on C-SPAN, and you have 45 minutes to make your case, and that you can be a little bit more like, going back and forth. C-SPAN, I mean, with CNN or something like that, you generally have, they actually told me I was going to have 6 minutes. It ended up being only 3 minutes. And so I was just like, I have to come out right now. I have to come out of the gate and let them have it. But again, that's not, the most important thing is to, in this point, this is something I'm interested. I'm writing about is courage, and what courage means in this moment. And I think that's also maybe a really interesting conversation to have about ministry and courage. Is because courage is the root of courage is cor, which is heart, the Latin word, and what does it mean? What does the heart mean? What is the heart telling us right now? What does courage mean? And what does it mean to take courage and love in a conversation with one another? And what does it mean to love the world right now? And have courage to say what you see and what you believe. And one of the thinkers who I really love is Howard Thurman, who was a kind of a mystic, who was a Baptist preacher, and his grandmother was enslaved. He was raised by her. He wrote a lot about courage, and a lot about what it meant to live courageously. And Dr. King was a student at Boston University when he was the dean of the chapel there. And Howard Thurman wrote a book called Jesus and the Disinherited. And King carried that book with him during the Montgomery bus boycotts. And the point of that all is that there's a deep well within you that you have to call upon as someone who's who makes decisions, and everybody can be courageous in different ways. Not everybody's out there with their cape. You can be courageous in small ways, but how will you love the world right now? How will you love your neighbor? How will we love one another? And here's the good news, is that right now, in a time when a lot of people, you see some law firms, you see some universities, kind of like, obeying in advance, as Timothy Snyder might write, and really, not standing up for the principles and the role that they should have in a free society. Religious folks have really been courageous, and I would say, we're seeing a really important courage coming from religious leadership, and especially, in the face of an effort to kind of really silence voices that disagree with the administration. And so there is a courage out there. And I think anyone who has the audacity to get into ministry at whatever level, whether a deacon or a clergy person or at any level. We are tapping into something that says we have a role to play,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say find that courage to know clearly what your role is and how you want to play it, and trust yourself and trust that you have what it takes. And so all of this is going back to like what I find is most fun. It's not fun exactly to lead always, but it is recognizing the privilege and all that comes with that privilege of really deciding this is what we're going to do now, and this is why we're going to do it, and going out and being clear about that. That's what I really appreciate about my role as president of Interfaith Alliance, and yeah.
Do you feel like that is really the call to the church now, is to be people of courage, to go as far as you can and then maybe a little bit further? I mean, what?
I would just, I think it's really like everybody's going to be courageous in different ways, but definitely try to connect it with this deep well. And I think it's very much connected. Like it's about how we love our neighbor, but it goes, the well itself is our whatever kind of relationship we have with the divine, and that power that gives us the courage to go on, and it's just it's an opportunity for meditation and reflection about like, what is my well of courage that I'm going to call upon right now, and to do whatever I'm being called to do. And again, what I like about your podcast is that the idea is that that's going to lead people in very different directions as far as like what ministry can look like.
I would love to just have a collection of people's like their courage stories, all those places that you never thought that you would go, those things that you never thought that you would do, and yet here you end up, and here's and you have a story to tell about it. I love those sort of things.
Yeah. I think that would be that's a great it would be a great way to imagine an opening conversation with a group that was new to one another. What are some things that called upon courage? So
yeah, what are things that you never imagined yourself doing, and yet here you've done it. So think about somebody, you who have done so much and interacted with so many different people. If you were doing this, what do you think you'd be doing?
That's interesting. I went to seminary because I was very interested in art as transformation. And I thought I was going to be kind of I don't know what I thought I was going to be, but like I'd studied theater, I'd studied dance, I'd studied like all these ways that people can be transformed. And I myself, like a lot of the influences for me were pop culture and rock and roll, and people like singing, unusual people talking, singing about God, like Patti Smith, or all these like very wild kind of punk rock people talking about God. Those were my prophets, and I was like, okay, somehow this is where I want to be. I actually pitched MTV about a show called MTV Soul that was going to get into that. But so I think that might have been a direction for me, because I would have been very even at seminary, I was really, my senior thesis was something called Our Lives Are Sacred Texts, where I created a performance workshop and led people through this series of discovery exercises. And then they performed their sacred stories as a, I called it like creating canon, and these new sacred stories that were created as a canon. And that was like really exciting to me. But I didn't, I mean, it's hard to figure out exactly what to do. But like, I love great dance. I love great theater. I love great music. And often that's what transports me. And so I think I would have had some sort of career in the arts, but arts as like a way of storytelling. I do view religion in that continuum of like great storytelling, great ritual, the ritual the ritual of art and the ritual of dance and the ritual, all of that. It's like, the whole idea of like liminal space where things change and where you like something is different. And I feel like at their best, religion and art are similar in that way, that you are transformed by the engagement with a piece of art or whatever, whether that's plastic, painting or whatever. Like that it can transform you. Or reading a book, that's amazing. I mean, some of my most transformative things have been reading fiction. It hasn't been theology per se. It's been reading fictions and stories, and Toni Morrison. Reading like Beloved. It's like, oh my God, you feel your soul kind of like being, torn apart, but also like expanded, and so I really believe in that. I still believe in that, and so if I had another life, I would do that. And I'm a bit of a I'll be honest, and I think it's important to be honest about this. I'm an unlikely minister, and I think I was not a pious kid. I was the only person, I think, in the history of the Presbyterian Church to fail confirmation because I didn't know you were supposed to go to classes. So I've always had this really weird relationship with the church, and like the idea of like, who's in, who's out. All that. Like I tend to place myself with the outsiders and want to be, I want that to be more fluid. And I know I'm not like someone who is, tries to place myself with the righteous. So I'm always trying to figure out like how I fit in also with the church. And sometimes that's an uneasy relationship. And I think a lot of us, there's a lot of fronting that has to happen. Like we have to like present something that is very appropriate, like, and well crafted to be acceptable. I think women have to do this way more than men. Men, by the fact of our bodies, get to walk into spaces and be treated in a different way. But I think women, I think, so, automatically you have to be so perfect in order to be, legitimate. There's just this, I want to shatter all of that. And so I think it's important for me to say, that part of my, I have traded in on respectability a lot because I present very respectable, but I just want to, I want listeners to know that like, it's really important that we don't try to create these images of what ministry is, like what the doing of it, but also the persons who get to do it and who are the right people to do it. And often there's like, the people who try to pretend like there's a very right person to do it often do terrible things in the name of ministry. So I offer that only as a way, hopefully as an opening for people who might not like. I'll tell you, and this I will finish. I'm sorry, but the one thing I will say is I had I mentioned like I studied religion. I was like, it was like a joke. I was like, oh, I'm studying religion. Ha, ha, ha. I'll never use that. But I remember even when I was in college at my very progressive, like kind of, radical school, a friend of mine was like, oh, if you were a minister, I would love for you to be a minister. And I was like, you're insane. And then when I got to New York and my cousins invited me to go to church, and I was like, okay. And then I was at this really interesting radical Baptist church, Judson Memorial Church in the Village. And this woman was like, oh, you should be a minister. You would be a great, and I was just like, you're insane. Like, this is so crazy that people are saying, but I did go up to Union. And I had this moment of clarity, and I've had so few of them, but I was like, oh, I'm supposed to go here. And then when I was at seminary, I was like, as I said, I was going to be an artist. I was going to be this crazy kind of mixing theology and arts, and this woman said, oh, you should work in a church. And then I was like, that's like the biggest performance art piece in the world. And then I went to this church, this Baptist church. And I was like, in that Baptist church, we had people living with AIDS. We had people who spoke almost no English. We had people who were homeless. We had people who were an Upper East Side matron who were, upper middle class. We had people from the Midwest. We called ourselves a subway church, where we had, like, if you were riding in the subway, one of everything could be there. And I did this survey on them. And I said, okay, give me one word to describe Jesus, one word to describe God, and one word to describe this church. And they had so much diversity in God and Jesus, but everybody described that church as home, safe, welcoming, and so that's when I was just like, oh, wow, this may be actually what I'm supposed to give my life to, is this location where people can come together, and where, like, Jesus can mean so many different people, and this pervading sense of love and acceptance in a place like New York, where everybody is shoved to the side all the time, but in that place, full respect, full dignity. And it was incredible, like, revelation. And then they were like, we want to ordain you. And I was like, that's so insane. But I kept on taking one step after another. And then finally, and then I will finish this, when I was in Seattle, the church I was working for was LGBTQ inclusive. Like, it was a welcoming and affirming church. It got disfellowshipped by the rest of the churches in the Northwest. And that was just as I was coming to the conclusion of my ordination. And I was just like, screw this. Why should I give my life to this crazy, like, these people who are so, just want to, just get, it was just like, and the senior minister there at the time, Rod Romney, he said to me, he said, Paul, too many people have done too much for you to just shove this aside. You get ordained. If you never use it, fine, but you don't know what God has in store for you. And I listened to him, and I got ordained. And I'm just so grateful I did. And then all of these other things have happened, and aren't I lucky?
Wow. Yeah. I get it. Like, the kid who grew up in the middle of a cornfield, graduated with like 52 people. The church I grew up at, women only got the 5th Sunday of the month at night, kind of thing. And here I, through all of this, and being the kid who was pregnant when she got married, and here I am, what feels like accident, but it's not, and what you describe is exactly what I have hoped all my life, for the church to be. And I just actually finished a dissertation on our transgender friends, that stuff, and I just, that whole church that says you can't, you don't belong, you don't, it just doesn't, it doesn't work. And yeah. So I'm
Well,
grateful for
I'm so grateful for you to share that, and I think that that's like, for me, that's the testimony. That you made space and you felt called and you decided, I'm not gonna, no one's gonna tell me, and for you, like, to be there, and for other people to see you and say, oh, there's space for her, and she's talking about transgender friends, and she's talking about different sequences of pregnancies, and she's talking about ministry and leadership as a woman. It's just so important that we continue to talk about this and not be silent, and not let other people say what matters. In fact, give me like, I honestly, I'm there. I am absolutely through with the idea that there is a prototype of who should be in ministry. And honestly, I want exactly you and many other people to I want those testimonies, because that's what will that's what will keep that's what will keep the church alive, and that's what will keep, like, God's witness alive for me. And
yeah.
so I just want to say I'm grateful for you.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm so glad that Anna was like, hey, you need to you need to meet Paul, because like this is I don't, it's just a life-giving kind of conversation, really. And I hope that other people hear that and are encouraged as well. So I know I asked you, like what you love about your job, but I have to ask that joy question. So like, so what's the thing that, or something, what brings you joy?
So, lots of things give me joy if I allow myself to feel joy. And I'm going to just tell you one story.
Yeah.
I was in in my kind of office. I live in New York City, so there's, like, not a lot of room. But I was in this other room, and it was kind of later at night, and I was doom scrolling, and I was just getting madder and madder, and I was just so angry at everything happening in the world. And then all of a sudden, from the other room, I hear this kind of loud clumping and some music, and I was just like, what is going on over there? Like, what is going on over there? This is like, it's their bedtime. I have two young kids. I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they're both boys, and they have opinions, and they have entire lives, and it's not dictated exactly by me, which is very frustrating. And so anyway, I went over there. I was like, okay, I'm shutting this down. Anyway, they had on this soundtrack from Hairspray. I don't know if you ever saw this movie. Hairspray is a movie,
Yeah.
John Waters. It is, and it was done like, and they did it as a musical, and they were dancing to "You Can't Stop the Beat." And this song is at the very end, where basically they've integrated this show, and in Baltimore in the 50s, and they're all dancing, and the black and the white dancers are together, and anyway, so they have, somehow this song comes on, and my youngest son is dancing to it. And so I had a choice to make, because I was in a really bad mood. I was really frustrated with the world, and I had a choice to make. Like, do I shut it down and make sure everybody understood this is a terrible moment in society, in the world, and here you are dancing? Or what I did, because there was grace somehow, because it certainly is not my natural, grace came over me, and I went over and I took his hands and I started dancing with him. And it was like, It was so great. And for 5 minutes we were dancing, and you can't stop the motion of the ocean. And it's like this, and it's all about, you can't stop the beat. And I was just like, oh, okay. Joy broke in amidst the worst, and my own part of it is the world making it, but also part of it is me buying into it. And instead, my most rebellious kid, who is a handful, but he was dancing, and we had so much fun, and it changed everything. And when I think about what I need in this world, I need that. I can't go with just the negative. I can't go with how bad everything is. There is joy all around us, and we can tap into it. We can create it. I can recognize it and decide to add to it instead of shutting it down. And so that's an example of what I'll offer as the possibility of joy, if I can open my heart to it and see it when it comes my way.
I love it. I love it. That's why, like, it doesn't matter who I have on the show, everybody is asked the joy question. And so it doesn't matter if you're Baptist, Catholic.
Oh, sorry. What I really meant to say was Jesus.
Oh, yeah, you did. Yeah,
otherwise, you're going to delete everything if I didn't say Jesus right away. Yeah. I meant Jesus.
And this is what you get. You get people who, so you're telling the story. I'm going, please say dancing, please say dancing, please say, yes. Because if you would have said, yeah, I just, I would have been like, really? So what are we telling? Yeah. But yeah, so we dance. We dance. Yeah. We dance. Because those kids are life-giving. They're so life-giving. And irritating and messy and all those other things that ministry is too.
Yes.
But we dance. Except we're Baptist, and apparently.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about that. I forgot who I was talking to. I apologize.
I don't dance well.
Okay. And by that story, I mean I condemn all dancing. Clearly. Right. Just trying to stay in your good graces, Meg.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my God. This is so much fun. See, this is like my favorite thing ever. And somehow I get to do this, talk about grace. Somehow I get to do this. So thank you. Thank you for your time, for your ministry, for all of it. I'll put all the links and all the things in the show notes, everybody. And wow. Talk about life-giving. Like, this has been it, like, for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Meg. I enjoyed it.
All right. We thank everybody for watching.